Before the break, we discussed these dice roll examples. One, it is with everything on the server side. In the second one, we had client with JavaScript, and server side is providing original pages, original HTML, and also it is providing data in terms of JSON, right, using RESTful service. As already we noticed in the first half of the lesson, what is provided by RESTful service, in this case, it is just pure data without any additional descriptions or metadata. At the next step, we will create a project from scratch, a simple default project that will pick data from the database with some extra configuration. And you will see that it provides all functionality like list, pick one, change one, delete, and replace some particular data field. So using some client, JavaScript or Angular or Postman, and Postman is useful in terms of testing. So this is what we'll do for testing. So let's create project from scratch and call it since it will contain copy-pasted data from student data examples, so let's call it MyStudentData. So I will stop this from running, and so I will close things that I don't use. Okay. So file, close project. And new project. I will call it MyStudentData. I pick, for simplicity, I pick Java Gradle Groovy, like how we did it in previous projects. And here it is Sheridan login name, as usual. From starting this week until the end of the course, I will stick to using Java 17 and Spring Boot 3. So we switch it to newer version close to midterm. So 17 jar. Next. And now what to select? When I created dice roller service, I mentioned that I selected just one thing. I selected Spring Web Services. Right? It is not what I want to select right now. The reason is that I'm not doing brute force approach. I'm using libraries that already had it inside. Okay? So I will not select in this part because it will be included with different library. And it will be deeply inside of the library. But I need to select something else. First, I need to, since it's coming from database, logically we need to select database-related stuff. So since I'm copy-pasting stuff from Spring Student Data 1, I selected the same thing that we use it in Student Data 1. Spring Data GPA and H2 database. Spring Data GPA is also a requirement for implementing services this way. Now you can combine it with MySQL or other things, but this is because I copy-paste. All right. So what else do I need to select? I do need to select one additional thing, and it is REST repositories. So for this project, I only selected REST repositories and GPA as in any other project that is using database. And since this project is using H2, I selected H2 database. All right. So let's create project. And I will also need to open Student Data 1 as a separate window because I will keep copy-pasting from it. First, I will just wait till it's finished building. Otherwise, I'm risking to freeze it. it seems like it didn't finish. There's no point of running it, it's because it's empty. So let's open student data 1 as a separate window. Open project in a separate window. I click it new instead of open. Mistake. Open in a separate window, student data 1. Oh, I didn't have it here. Maybe it's. Okay, I got it. I assume it is also on your hard drive somewhere. You don't need to run it because we will just copy-paste code from it. But critically, it is important it's a separate window. Right? Now, since I'm using the same kind of data, the same kind of database, I need to copy-paste some database configuration. This is default port. You don't need to copy-paste it. In this program, I will not use logging for simplicity, and because it is, you will see it's an extremely short program. So this is not used. This part, it is specifically necessary if you use template engine. But I'm not using template engine in this program, so I'm not copy-pasting that. So I will copy-paste things starting from this line till the end. Only H2 related database configuration. Okay, this one. So I do copy, and I open similar file, the same name, in resources, main resources, application properties, and I paste it here. Also, this project has some starting data in it that is used for testing and debugging, right? We have schema SQL file that is creating a table, and we have data SQL that is populating data as this table with the data. So I will just copy-paste these two files. So I highlight this, say copy, and I also post it in resources, paste it in resources. So let's see what is inside of the files. Add it to control. In schema SQL, we're creating table. In data SQL, we're populating this table with 4 entries. It's like starting data just to do testing and debugging. Okay. IDE asks us to set up data source and set up dialect. It is for IDE to help us better. It assumes that we will type some SQL, so it needs to know which kind of SQL we use, which dialect, so it will prompt this more correctly. But we're not planning to type SQL, so I will just ignore these things because it's not helpful in this case. Okay. It is for the IDE. IDE wants to know how to help us better, but I don't need this help at this moment, so I just ignore it. All right. Next, I copy-pasted files to initialize database. I copy-pasted configuration. I also need to copy-paste entity and repository, this database part. You know when you create subfolders, but the folders inside of package, they are packages also in Java. They are optional. It is for data organization, the project organization or code organization. So technically, I could copy-paste these two files in here, right? In the same folder. Yeah, why not? The only restriction is that all Java files must be in the same folder with application or in sub-packages, right? So technically, I could copy-paste it here. But I will want to keep the same structure. So I will create the same packages. So it's new package data. and new package repository. So it will be just easy to compare two projects. So I highlight these two files. One, it is student entity GPA. This entity is created to match row inside of the database table. So it is class matching row in the given database. And second, student data repository GPA is implementing student data repository GPA. It's a declaration of the interface that we want system to implement. Okay. So I copy these two and I paste it in repository. It's two. When we open student data entity GPA, we will realize that something is in red. The reason is there are two reasons for it. One, because one of the reasons that student data 1, if you didn't switch it to Spring Boot 3 project, it would have JavaX here. So if your code contains JavaX, change it to Jakarta. Because we created Spring Boot 3 project, but copy-pasted code that potentially is Spring Boot 2. I'm not sure which version you open it. Make sure that you have Jakarta here, not JavaX. Okay, this one. So it should be Jakarta. Next, this path is coming from Logbok, but this project is not using Logbok because they explicitly didn't add it. Okay. So for simplicity, I want not to use Logbok to show that it's not essential part of the program. So for this reason, I delete this part, and I also delete this part, these things that comes from Logbok. Right? But Logbok was providing setters and getters. Without setters and getters, these programs will simply won't work. So instead, just because I deleted setter and getter annotation, I need to include setters and getters explicitly. So I generate them. Right-click, generate. I select getter and setter, highlighted everything, and I click OK. Generate, setter and getter, highlighted everything, and click OK. Why do I do it? Just to show that using Logbok is not essential in this program. You can just include REST repository library and do common sense, like this case, create entities, and create a repository declaration in interface, and this is it. Done. I don't need to add any extra code. If output is not what I like, we may customize it a little bit, but let's run and see what it does. Right? So I added some entity, some repository, libraries, and this is it. No controller. I run this project and see, hopefully it will start. It did start, right? Now let's go to using browser first, and after this we will use Postman. So let's open this page with browser first. Localhost 8080. It didn't start because I have something running. My student data. My dice roller is running, so I couldn't start it. Oh no, I did, fine. Dice roller killed. So reload, localhost 8080, and this is what is produced. So what is this? Remember that at the previous code, previous example that was dice roller, we got pure data. In this case, it's not the case. It is description of the data. So it says that we have something like student entity GPAs that serves data at this address. There is also some extra data at this address. So it is listing all resources. Obviously, this name is kind of bad for address, right? So we better get rid of this issue. The easiest way to get rid of this issue is just to rename the class name. In this case, it is student entity GPA. If you rename it to student, it will be just students. It will create plural out of class name. You see that this is class name, and it made it plural with adding s. Okay. But before renaming it, let's see what it provides us. Okay. So let's go to this address. By the way, you can display it by pages. You can, so this is size of page. And you can specify sorting. But this is optional, so as a parameter, so I said just do default, and I paste it here. So what I have JSON that contains array of objects in JSON format, and I also got additional metadata describing it. Please notice that ID is not included into the data of this object. It makes sense because ID, it is for database. But if we serve data from web, we better know this address of one piece of data that contains ID. Because ID itself is not enough to get the rest of the data. For the database, it's enough because it's primary key. In this case, it's not, right? It is possible to change configuration, so ID will be also served. But it's not shown by default. So for example, let's select address of Lisa Simpson data and paste it into address line. We got specific data about Lisa Simpson and also a reference to self, like ID, location of it. And the same, but with name of this object. Okay. So it is, this is metadata. Now, let's fix one a little annoying issue that came from name of the class. So let's rename this to students, and so on. And again, brute force, and probably the simplest way, is just to rename the class. Is to go to student entity GPA and just rename the class to student, and it will fix the issue. But what if it is impossible or you don't want to do that for some reason? There is a way around to rename the stuff. So let's go hard way. So, right? Generated name appear in three places. It appears as single here, not plural, single, right? It appears as plural inside of address path, inside of address line. And if we go back, you will see that it also appears in plural here, in metadata. So it appears in three places. When you rename it, you have full control which one to rename. So this is why we'll provide three names at the time of renaming. Okay? Because it appears in three places and it is full control, so you specify it 3 times. All right? So let's do so. And again, the easiest way just to use student name, just name of the class is student. How to do it? You go to student data repository and you type it, because it's using annotation, and look for something that's called like repository rest resource. resource, it's a web resource, means web resource. And this is what we're dealing with. It's a data on web resource. So I'm selecting this one, repository REST resource, open parentheses, close parentheses, and now put control space. Control space, it will give you clues. I select path, and in this case, it is address of this resource, so it is students. It will be part of the path. So I type students. So it will be part of the address. Now we have two references, one for single and one for plural. So I will also provide that one. Control space, item resource relation, it is this one link with single. So I put student, comma, in control space, and I'm looking for something like collection. Collection resource relation. And this is in plural because it's for collection. So it is students. All right. Sometimes it is necessary because it's not always able to derive plural correctly according to grammar. Because sometimes they just add s, but it's not always the case like child and children, right? So so sometimes you have to override it, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Okay. So let's stop it, run it, and make sure that we fix this issue. And after this, we will go to Postman software, and we will send requests to list data, to retrieve one item, to delete one item, to replace one item, and to edit one item. Right? Going to localhost 8080, you see we fix it in path. So this is path. Let's go to this address. So we fixed the issue for, where it was, oh, here it is. It used to be, it is for single in a student, and it was also plural somewhere. It's probably at the top. Embedded students. This one. We fixed this one. Oh, no, sorry. So this is just data field. It's not the issue. So let's find where it was. No, it is not here. It's probably in the original address. Oh, here it is, this one. So it was one of those. It is relation to items. So metadata is browsable, and it shows you where to go further to find extra data. So it's not very descriptive, but at least it shows what kind of addresses you can use to retrieve data. Okay. We can add this metadata with help of other libraries if we want to edit, like dice roll example, to provide metadata. But I wanted to keep it simple, so this is why it doesn't have metadata. If you want to add metadata, you need to add library, and you need to add your code in addition to that. Just adding library will not help if you want to do it from scratch. Okay. What library is handling metadata? So when you create project, in web, I selected a Spring Web. No, if I'm creating this from scratch, like dice roller, this library is adding metadata. Okay, so I would need to select this library, and I will also need to add extra code, because just selecting library will not magically create metadata. So I didn't do this one. But in this project, I use the REST repositories, and when you select REST repositories, it will generate metadata from the libraries, REST repositories libraries. All right? What is this part? This is also very interesting option. In this case, it will provide browserable HTML pages describing the data, and it is not just describing the data, you can also alter data using this. So it is like something similar to Postman, but more primitive, far more primitive. So it is browsable pages in HTML for the data that will give you option to edit and delete and insert. Okay. So let's keep it for further, okay? So I click cancel, so I'm not creating additional project. Now let's play with this data using Postman. So I want to create a new collection because it's like new project. And my student data. Data. Is it my student data or student data service? How did I call project? My student data. Okay. Technically, it is service, so we can add word service to it. All right. So it is my student data. Let's send default request. Right. So add request, and let's call default. And it is localhost 8080. Localhost 8080. Send that. And what we get, it is just metadata for the first page. Right. So I click save. So let's create a request like get all students data. So the same, I duplicate request and say get all students. And what was the address? /students, right? So this is data about all students, including metadata. When you get this kind of responses, you see that it's easier than in browser because you can fold it. First of all, it is pretty formatted. When you get a response from a RESTful service, it doesn't have to come nicely formatted like this, because sometimes it just comes as one wrapped line. One line which is just wrapped. Incomprehensible, because it's not designed for easy human reading. So in this case, programs like Postman are useful at least just to have it pretty formatted. So you can browse it easily what kind of data you have. So it is get all students. And now let's duplicate it and get one student. Right. Okay. Edit. Get one student. Okay. Remember that address of one data for one student, it is students/id, right? How do I know? From the metadata. So if we go to students, paste. Oh, what did I do? Students, copy, paste. Here it is, Lisa Simpson, and this is the address of Lisa Simpson. So it is /ID. Okay. And now it is localhost 8080 students /2 and send. I got data specific to Lisa Simpson. So it is get one student. So let's save it. And now let's replace data related to the student. So it is altered entire piece. Okay. So for example, let's replace Bart Simpson, number 1. It goes as number 1. So there is duplicate and rename it to replace one student, or replace one item. Okay, one record. Replace not student, a record. We replace record, right? Replace one record. Okay. When you replace it, you put also ID. Let's put 1. First, it is Bart Simpson, replacing Bart Simpson. Okay. And we need to provide the data to use when we replace it. Right? How to do it? First, you go back here, and you copy this piece up to this line. When you send for replacing, you need to send JSON, but you don't send metadata. And it should be valid JSON, so I will need to remove this comma, and I need to close curly brace. Set copy. Where should I paste it? First, it is not get request, it is put. Put is doing replacement. Next, it goes into body, and I select row, and instead of text, I select JSON. So it goes here. Okay. Paste. Now you see it's invalid JSON, so I need to remove comma and put curly brace. And since I'm replacing Bart Simpson, okay, let's put Alex Simpson, okay? All right. So I'm replacing one record. And now I send it. It says OK, and this is response. And response is new data. Okay. 200 OK and new data. So going back to get all students, I'm sending request to get all students, and now Bart Simpson is Alex Simpson. And now let's edit one item. When we use edit, we use not put. Oh, you can use put if you replace everything, right? Like what I did, like Alex. Yes?
It changes in the actual database as well.
Yeah? It's supposed to be. Yeah. A patch is replacing one field. In this case, I replace it entire piece because I copy-paste it. A patch is replacing one field. So let's duplicate the last one and call it edit one record. So duplicate and call it edit one record. And instead of get, it is patch. Instead of, okay, let's put 2. So I want to save this part. In this one, patch body row text changing to JSON. I need data here. But in this case, it's only data that I want to replace. This is the ID is for 2. Remember, it's Lisa Simpson. I want to rename her like Lisa Johnson. So I will provide on the field that I want to replace patch. Okay. So last name. It's supposed to be in quotes. Okay. Invalid JSON field name supposed to be in quotes. Okay. So again, patch address that contains ID and the fields that we are replacing. Okay. Let's send request. Okay. So now Lisa is Johnson. Change it last name. I need to rename this piece, right? So it is not. It's not call it copy. It is call it edit one record, right? Edit one record. And so let's save it. Now we have edit one record, which is patch. So what is missing? Delete, right? So let's. It's also missing insert one record, right? Insert one record is missing, and also delete. So let's insert one record, and after this, delete. So idea is very similar, but when you insert, you don't have an ID in the address line because it doesn't exist, logically, right? So I want to duplicate maybe this one, replace, because it's kind of close. It has entire piece, right? So I duplicate replace. Duplicate. So I got a copy. Now I want to rename it to, say, insert one record. One record. So instead of put, it is post. For inserting, it is post. And in this case, it doesn't have ID. It is all students. For the body, I have row, JSON, and fields that I'm going to insert. So let's rename, like Harry Potter. Okay. Year 3. All right. Now let's send it. Okay, a response is 201 created. Remember, it was response OK. In this case, OK is still OK, right? Because it is created, it's not error, right? And so 200, if response is not OK, it's not necessarily error, right? In this case, it is OK. Insert one record, so let's save it. Also, we have, let's do delete one record. When we delete request, we send delete request to specific address with ID. All right. So let's see whom to delete. So who is Homer Simpson? Let's delete Homer Simpson. He has ID 3. Okay. So which one? So get one student, I will duplicate get one student. So I'm changing this to delete and put 3. And change delete one record. Delete one record. This is supposed to delete Homer Simpson, right? So let's see. Send delete request. And response is 204, no content. This is expected response for delete. Because typically requests are returning new data, but in this case with deleted data, we don't have new data. So it is what is supposed to be after delete. So I want to save it. Let's check it if it is indeed deleted, the data. So get all students, send request. and it doesn't have a Homer. Lisa, and after this, March. All right. Questions? So what did we do? We had get requests, delete requests, put requests, post requests, and patch requests. There are other, but they're less common.